Imagine this. The only way in is a helicopter that flies once a day, weather permitting, and cancels at the first sign of wind. The ferry comes, but only if the sea is calm, and out here, the sea isn't calm every week. The nearest hospital is hours away by boat or by air, if the helicopter can even take off that day. The village has exactly one shop, and it's open on a schedule that depends on whether the supply boat made it in from the mainland. Winter snow buries the single road out of town, sealing the village off from the rest of the world for weeks at a stretch. Mobile signal, where it exists at all, is one flickering bar on the porch, and only if you stand in exactly the right corner of the house. For most of us, this sounds like a hardship to survive, a temporary sacrifice you make and then leave behind. But for thousands of people in Japan, this isn't temporary at all. This is simply the environment they were born into. Not a wilderness retreat, not a survival experiment for the cameras. This is home, the place where they're born, where they raise children or watch the last children leave, where they grow old and where they intend to die. This isn't just remoteness. This is a country where, a short flight from some of the densest, most hyper-connected megacities on the planet, there are villages where no child has been born in 20 years. Islands where you have to book your ferry ticket a month ahead because it only sails twice a week if the weather cooperates. Shrines where women still aren't permitted to set foot by a rule that has never once been broken in over 1,000 years. Why do people stay in places the government has quietly tried to relocate them out of, offering money and new housing just to make a stubborn line item disappear from a budget report? Why did one entire village choose to repopulate itself with life-sized dolls rather than admit out loud that it had already died? The answers are more complicated than tradition, and more complicated than there's simply nowhere else to go. Today we're traveling to the 12 most isolated inhabited places in Japan. Places official statistics have all but written off. Places that keep showing up on lists of villages expected to vanish within a generation, and that, somehow, keep refusing to disappear on schedule. If you're drawn to stories that go beyond postcard Japan, beyond temples, sushi counters, and Tokyo neon, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Number 1. Aogashima, Tokyo Prefecture, the village inside a volcano. Aogashima is on paper part of Tokyo, the exact same Tokyo that's home to 14 million people and some of the most expensive real estate on Earth. But reaching it is its own small expedition. First, a plane or ferry to the larger island of Hachijojima, then a 20-minute helicopter hop that flies once a day and cancels at the slightest crosswind. Or if you'd rather not fly, a ferry that runs 3 or 4 times a week, weather permitting, and takes more than 11 hours from Tokyo. About 170 people live here, inside an active volcano. Not near it, inside it. The island itself is a double caldera, an outer rim of cliffs enclosing an inner crater, and the village sits down in that inner bowl, ringed by the walls of a volcano that is dormant, not dead, and still vents hot steam from cracks in the ground. So, why does anyone live here? The answer turns out to be less mystical than the setting suggests. This is home across many generations, and the tiny community has managed to hold on to a working elementary school, a post office, and something almost nowhere else in Japan has: a public geothermal cooking facility where residents lower food into steam vents straight from the volcano and cook rice and vegetables without burning a drop of gas. One islander put it simply: the volcano tried to erase this place once, in the 1780s, when a major eruption forced everyone to evacuate for years. And their ancestors came back anyway, the moment it was survivable. Isolation here isn't a tragedy to be endured. It's simply the price of staying yourself on your own land in a country rushing to urbanize everything around it. Number 2. Ogasawara Islands, Chichi-jima, Tokyo Prefecture. The islands with no airport. This too is officially Tokyo on the map and on the tax forms. In reality, It's an archipelago roughly 1,000 kilometers south of the capital, out in the open Pacific, and it can be reached exactly one way. A ferry that takes almost a full 24 hours and sails once every 5 or 6 days, not once a day, once every 5 or 6 days. There is no airport, and there never has been one. Environmental groups and residents have blocked every proposal for decades, afraid that a runway would tear apart the unique ecosystem that later earned the islands a UNESCO World Heritage listing, sometimes nicknamed the Galapagos of the Orient. About 2,000 people live here, fully aware that a serious medical emergency means, at best, an amphibious aircraft from Japan's self-defense forces, not an ambulance 10 minutes away. Why stay somewhere that far from the nearest hospital on purpose? Because residents say, this might be one of the last places in Japan where the ocean still belongs to the people who live beside it, rather than to a tourism industry that has swallowed nearly every other coastline in the country. Locals often call themselves Bonin Islanders, after the archipelago's Old English name, and take real pride in being one of the few genetically and culturally distinct communities that mass development never managed to reach. The isolation for them isn't a wall. It's the last line of defense protecting something they don't want, turned into a resort. Number 3. Yubari, Hokkaido. The bankrupt city that refused to die, Yubari is Japan's answer to a coal town that outlived its coal. In the 1960s, roughly 120,000 people lived here, digging the fuel that helped power the country's post-war boom. Today, fewer than 6,000 remain, and the municipal government itself went formally bankrupt in 2007 too. The first city in modern Japan to be declared financially insolvent. The collapse wasn't gentle. Hospitals closed. Civil servant salaries were slashed by nearly a third. Entire blocks of apartment towers, built for a population that no longer exists, were demolished one by one, leaving open lots where neighborhoods used to be. And still, thousands of people simply stayed. Why? Part of the answer is almost comic in how small it is. Melons. Yubari is home to the famous Yubari King cantaloupe, a luxury fruit sold at auction for tens of thousands of dollars a pair. And that single crop, plus a handful of ski resorts, is nearly the entire economy still keeping the city breathing. The older residents who remain don't talk about it philosophically. One elderly shopkeeper summed it up flatly. We watched the boom. We watched the crash. We're not going to watch the rest of it from some other town. Yubari stands as a kind of warning label for what happens when Japan's demographic crisis is pushed all the way to its logical end. And at the very same time, it's proof that stubborn attachment to a place can outlast even a bankruptcy filing. Number 4, Ichinono, Hyogo Prefecture. The village repopulated by dolls. Officially, fewer than 60 people live in Ichinono, and nearly all of them are past retirement age. The young left decades ago for jobs in the cities, the local school closed its doors for good, and the sound of children playing simply vanished from the village one year and never came back. So one resident, a woman named Tsukimi Ayano, started making life-sized scarecrow figures out of old clothes. Clothes that had belonged to neighbors and relatives who had moved away or passed on. She kept making them. Today there are, by most counts, more cloth dolls scattered around Ichinono than there are living people. Dolls sitting at the bus stop waiting for a bus that barely comes. Dolls working in the rice paddies. Dolls seated at old classroom desks inside the shuttered elementary school, arranged to look from a distance, like a class that's still in session. This isn't primarily a tourist stunt, even though visitors do come now to photograph it. It's a way for the handful of elderly residents to cope with a silence that would otherwise be unbearable. We're probably outnumbered by puppets, one of the oldest women in the village told a reporter, matter-of-factly, without much drama in her voice at all. Ichinono might be the single most quietly devastating entry on this list. Proof that isolation in Japan doesn't always stay geographic. Sometimes it turns psychological, and a village survives depopulation by building itself a fake population to replace the one it lost. Number 5. Nanmoku, Gunma Prefecture, the oldest village in Japan. In 1955, Nanmoku was a thriving hamlet of roughly 11,000 people, its economy built on silk and timber. Today, it has fewer than 1,500 residents, and 2/3 of them are over the age of 65, officially making it the oldest village by average age anywhere in the country. Nanmoku sits barely 80 miles from central Tokyo, tucked into the Green Mountains of Gunma Prefecture. It isn't cut off by ocean or by volcano. It's cut off by something quieter and, in its own way, crueler: economics. When the silk and timber industries that had fed the village for generations finally collapsed, the young left with them, and almost nobody came to replace them. The national government has poured money into trying to save villages exactly like this one. Relocation subsidies, free or heavily discounted housing for young families willing to move in, tax breaks for anyone who'll start a farm here. But 90-year-old farmer Hachiro Koganazawa, who still grows flowers and vegetables on his small plot outside the village, put his own reasoning simply. He isn't leaving because this is his land, and land doesn't relocate just because a policy office in Tokyo has decided the math no longer works. Nanmoku is, by most projections, a preview of what's coming for hundreds of other Japanese villages if the country's demographic slide doesn't slow down. Number 6. Ainokura, Toyama Prefecture, a village frozen in the feudal era. About 20 Gasho-zukuri farmhouses stand in Ainokura, their enormous thatched roofs built at a steep prayer hands angle specifically so a full meter of winter snow will slide off rather than collapse them. Some of these houses are more than 300 years old, and they're still lived in, not preserved behind glass. Ainokura sits close to its far more famous neighbor, Shirakawa-go, which draws millions of tourists a year and has a bullet train accessible bus route straight to its front gate. Ainokura has neither the fame nor the road. The narrow mountain route in was never widened, and that single fact, the road nobody ever bothered to improve, is exactly what kept the modern world and the modern crowds out. The few dozen residents left run small house museums, Minshuku guest houses for the rare traveler willing to make the trip, and small mountain farms. In winter, snow can seal off the only road out for days at a time. But locals say the snow is, in its own strange way, their best protection. It keeps away the tour buses that turned Shirakawa-go into something closer to a theme park and lets Ainokura stay what it's always been: a real, working, lived-in village, not a stage set of one. Number 7. Iya Valley, Tsurui and Ochiai villages, Tokushima Prefecture, the fugitive samurai's refuge. Local legend says that surviving warriors of the defeated Taira clan fled into these mountains after their catastrophic loss in the 12th century Genpei War and built a settlement in a gorge so steep and so narrow that no army could realistically follow them in. Even today, a single winding road is the only way through, and rope and vine suspension bridges, called kazurabashi, still span the ravines, deliberately never reinforced with modern steel cable, because the original point of a vine bridge was that you could cut it in minutes and strand anyone chasing you on the far side. Today, the hamlet of Ochiai, often ranked among the most beautiful villages in Japan, is home to only a few dozen people, mostly elderly farmers, whose houses climb the mountainside in terraces so steep it genuinely looks, at first glance, physically impossible for a house to be standing there at all. People here don't stay purely out of stubbornness. There's a real sense of belonging to the legend itself. This is, quite literally, the exact patch of land their ancestors chose to disappear into rather than surrender to an empire that was hunting them. And it worked. They were never found. In the Iya Valley, isolation was never really a curse. Historically, it was salvation, and residents still seem to carry a quiet echo of that gratitude. Number 8. Okinoshima, Fukuoka Prefecture, the Forbidden Island. This is by far the strangest entry on the list, because officially, no one at all lives on Okinoshima. except for one person, always exactly one. A Shinto priest keeps a solitary 10-day watch on the island before being relieved and rotated out by the next priest in line. A cycle that has continued in some form for well over 1,000 years. The island is considered so sacred, it holds ancient ritual artifacts believed to connect it directly to the sun goddess Amaterasu, that women have been categorically forbidden from setting foot on it without exception for as long as records exist. The small number of men who are occasionally granted permission to visit for a single annual ritual must first strip fully naked and ritually purify themselves in the sea before they're allowed to walk onto the shore. No visitor, ever under any circumstance, is permitted to remove so much as a single pebble or blade of grass from the island. Local tradition holds that the island's guardian spirits will personally punish anyone who tries. UNESCO named Okinoshima a World Heritage Site for precisely this reason. Not despite the isolation, but because of it. A 1,000-year-old tradition of total exclusion, preserved completely intact into the present day. Okinoshima proves something none of the other entries on this list quite managed to. That in Japan, extreme solitude isn't always something imposed by geography or poverty. Sometimes it's a sacred duty, chosen and defended on purpose, indefinitely. Number 9. Rebun Island, Hokkaido. The country's northern edge, Rebun is Japan's northernmost inhabited island, scoured year-round by icy winds off the Sea of Okhotsk, where summer barely lasts 2 short months, and winter ferries can stop running entirely for weeks at a time because of storms and drifting sea ice. Roughly 2,500 people make their living here fishing and harvesting kelp, supplemented by a modest tourism trade built around the island's unusual alpine flora. Locals call it their floating garden, flowers that anywhere else in Japan only grow high up in the mountains bloom here at sea level, tricked into thinking they're at altitude by the island's brutally cold climate. Residents say the hardest part of life here isn't the distance itself, it's the distance from medical care specifically. A serious injury or illness means a helicopter evacuation, and the same weather that makes evacuations necessary in the first place is very often the same weather that keeps the helicopter grounded on the mainland. And yet, for fishing families who are the 3rd or 4th generation to call Rebun home, moving to a city isn't even a real option they consider. Out here, I hear the sea, not traffic, is close to the exact phrase you'll hear from more than one islander if you ask why they never left. Number 10. Sutsu, Hokkaido, the town that dared to defy the whole country. Sutsu is a small fishing town of roughly 2,000 people that suddenly found itself at the center of a nationwide firestorm in 2020, when its mayor agreed to let the town be considered for a government survey into hosting a permanent nuclear waste storage facility. In exchange for substantial subsidies, it was, and still is, the only municipality in the entire country to even open that conversation publicly. The town split almost overnight. Residents received threats. Neighboring regions publicly condemned the mayor. And yet the town never fully walked the idea back. The reasoning, when residents explain it, is blunt to the point of being uncomfortable. Fishing income and tourism have been shrinking for years. The young keep leaving for Sapporo or Tokyo, and the survey subsidy might genuinely be the only realistic path left for the town to still exist in any recognizable form 20 years from now. Sutsu is the most uncomfortable entry on this whole list, and deliberately so, because it shows what happens when isolation and decline get pushed far enough. A community willing to at least discuss the single most radioactive option on the table, quite literally, rather than quietly disappear off the map like so many towns around it already have. Number 11. Kudakajima, Okinawa Prefecture, the island of the gods. Kudakajima is a small coral island off the coast of Okinawa that, according to local Ryukyuan mythology, is the exact spot where the creator goddess Amamakyu first set foot and founded the ancient kingdom of Ryukyu. Because of that origin story, The entire island has been treated as sacred ground for centuries, and certain ritual sites on it remain strictly off-limits to outsiders, tourists included, to this day, with no exceptions made, regardless of how far someone has traveled to see them. The permanent population is under 200 people, mostly elderly, and the island still keeps alive a unique religious tradition known as Noro. Priestesses who inherit their spiritual role and duties strictly through the maternal line, a practice that has nearly died out everywhere else across Okinawa's many islands, but has survived quietly here. The young mostly leave to find work on Okinawa's main island, but the elders who remain refuse to relocate the island's rituals anywhere else, no matter how impractical that refusal becomes as the population shrinks. As one elder explained it, the gods live in this specific land, not in whichever person happens to be the one leaving it. Kudakajima is one more case, on a list already full of them, where isolation in Japan turns out to be less a geographic accident than a spiritual choice, made and remade by every generation that decides to stay. Number 12. Toshima, Tokyo Prefecture, the smallest village in the country. Toshima is a tiny volcanic island in the Izu archipelago, officially the smallest incorporated village, or mura, in the entirety of Japan by population census, somewhere around 300 people, depending on the year you check. The ferry runs on an irregular schedule, there's no helicopter pad at all, and the single road that circles the entire island can be driven end to end in under 20 minutes without ever leaving second gear. The local economy runs on fishing, on camellia cultivation. The seeds are pressed for sabaki oil, a specialty product that's been made on the island for centuries, and on a small but devoted diving tourism trade built around the exceptional clarity of the water just offshore. Residents on Toshima say that everyone on the island knows not just each other's names, but each other's entire life story in full, whether they want to or not. That's simultaneously the cruelty and the comfort of a community this small and this cut off. There's nowhere at all to hide from your neighbors, but there's also never really a version of being truly, completely alone.